Welcome to Positive Recovery MD. If you're listening, chances are you want to create happiness around you and thrive in your life. We're glad you're here and you've come to the right place. This podcast will inspire and motivate you to not merely survive your recovery journey, we'll give you the tools to build or strengthen your foundation to thrive and flourish in your life. Each week, we'll come together as a community to have authentic conversations around addiction, recovery, and what matters. Growth and progress, not perfection. All while developing positive habits for you to utilize in your life. To learn more, please visit positiverecoverymd.com to sign up to receive the daily positive interventions that we'll review, as well as gain access to exclusive Positive Recovery content available only to Positive Recovery MD listeners. All right, let's get started.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Positive Recovery MD's 5th podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Dr. Jason Powers, accompanied by
Julie DeNofa, president of Positive Recovery Centers, and I'm super excited about who we have as our guest today.
Me too. In fact, we have a lot in common, doctors and the two guests. They happen to be comedians. And the positive intervention for the day is actually appropriate for comedians. And it's not a very sexy one. It has to do with health. And you might think, how do comedians and health, what do they have in common? Well, if you go back to the Greeks, as we often do in philosophy and medicine and psychology, they knew a lot about humor. In fact, they thought that health was dependent on a perfect balance of body humors. And if you were of ill humor, it meant you were sick. If you were of good humor, you were well. So laughter is indeed good medicine. And in fact, I try to, I guess I'm a closet comedian. And so I'm going to pick your brains and hopefully end up with a mentor or two after this. But today we have two awesome comedians that are from Houston. Not really, but they consider Houston their home. I'll start with Andy. Andy Huggins is a graduate of both the Comedy Store in Los Angeles and Houston's renowned Comedy Workshop. Andy has worked with acts ranging from Ray Charles, Gardell, Jeff Foxworthy, or Jeff Foxworthy, as he's known to a lot of people, and Dick Gregory. So I know everybody but Billy. So that's a nice resume. So he's played comedy clubs, jazz clubs, corporate gigs, AA conventions, and has entertained our troops stationed in Japan. In the mid-'80s, he was a member of the Texas Outlaw Comics, whose legendary performances are still celebrated today. And I could tell you, when I heard that he was going to be a guest and having never met him, I looked him up on YouTube, and he's pretty funny. He appears in the acclaimed documentary American, the Bill Hicks Story. He's written for Bill Hicks, Jay Leno, and Billy Crystal on the Academy Awards. That makes sense. I knew you looked marvelous. So Andy is one of the most sought-after comedians in Texas and a comedy staple since 1981. Last year, he had an outstanding performance on America's Got Talent. Wow. Okay, reading this out loud is really more impressive than when I read it to myself. I love this. Andy turned 60 sometime in his early 30s. At long, happy last, age, attitude, and comedy has come together at the same time. So welcome, Andy.
Thank you. I had a good friend tell me, you've always been an old man, Andy, even back when you were. In fact, I had one of my roommates back in Los Angeles in my 30s. He used to call me his old feller. In my 30s. So.
Well, I took an acting class, some sort of thing in college. I actually got credit for it. And my teacher used to say that he doesn't get any roles because he is an old man. Yeah. And he was like in his 30s, but I kind of know what you mean.
Yeah.
He had a walker and he used to talk real slow. And
we're getting there.
All right.
I may need help getting to the door.
Well, I'll be happy to. You make us laugh, I'll piggyback you. Yeah. We also have Mike Peterson, who is a retired sergeant from the City of West University Police Department in Houston after 20 years of service. I met him. He reminded me at a chili cook-off, which I took second place of. Thank you very much.
I got first place.
Mike's also really funny. When I looked him up, and I was kind of wondering, why are these guys on our podcast? Because Mike had a beer, but as it turns out, he doesn't need to be in recovery, and his wife has been a long life friend with George Joseph, and together they helped form the Sober Recreation Committee in Houston. So, and if you've seen Andy's routine, or I'm sure he'll tell you, and I'm blowing his anonymity, he is in recovery. So we do have an appropriate guest lineup. So Mike's also been performing stand-up for 21 years. He's appeared on ABC's The View and was a finalist in Ed McMahon's Next Big Star contest, as well as a past finalist in Houston's Funniest Comedian contest. He shared the stage with luminaries like Jay Leno, Michael Winslow, Frank Caliendo, and Angela Johnson. Kathleen Madigan, who, of this list, she's my favorite. She's so funny.
She's the best.
And she's so smart. And she talks that she isn't, but man, great insight. And Richard Lewis, to name a few. Mike's also opened for Grammy Award legend Glenn Campbell.
Yeah.
Oh, this is also more impressive right out loud, isn't it? Wow, we're in the presence of royalty, Julie.
That's right.
So Mike's had the honor of traveling overseas also to Iraq and Kuwait twice to perform for our U.S. military troops. Mike also performs at comedy clubs, casinos, colleges, corporate events, including police banquets. So welcome, Mike.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for coming. So I guess I'll start with you, Andy, since I introduced you first. When did you come into comedy?
I started in late 1978.
Were you doing, what profession were you engaged in prior, besides drinking?
Well, actually, that was my main occupation, was getting drunk. I was a hotel desk clerk for the most part, but it wasn't a career. It was just a job to earn money to buy liquor.
Yeah, and you know, as we drink and we make best friends that we've never met before, we have these grandiose plans, right? So I can imagine you sitting at the bar making people laugh or laughing at you, whatever it may be, depending how drunk you are. What was the impetus that made you go into comedy?
I honestly believe that being a stand-up comic is what I was put on earth to do. So I did, I hear stories about, my family traveled around a lot, so I needed to make friends, or this home life was tough, or this, that, and that's why I got into comedy. I got into comedy because I was supposed to get into comedy. I watched comedy. I was born in 1950. I'd watch comedy all the time, sitcoms and the comics that would appear on Ed Sullivan. I didn't need an impetus to get into it. I was going to get into it no matter when I was born or where I was raised or the quality of my home life or anything. I was going to be a stand-up. So fortunate, so blessed that was the case, because that took a real important decision kind of out of my hands.
So what does somebody do when they decide they want to be a comedian? Do they just grab a mic and stand on the corner?
Well, in Virginia, where I was in the mid-'70s, there were no comedy clubs. There were no open mics. All I knew about from watching comics on TV and talking about their career, New York, Los Angeles. Flip the coin. I'm sure warm weather was actually, the reason I went to Los Angeles is because 75% of the time the comics were talking about the Comedy Store in Los Angeles. And there was an open mic there on Monday. And when I think back on it, I get the shivers, because it was just like the stupidest plan ever. I didn't have that much money. I thought I had was a lot of money when I moved out there. It wasn't. I didn't know anybody. I literally went out to Los Angeles, moved to Los Angeles to do an open mic, which is just moronic.
We're courageous.
Well, it was going to happen one way or another, and given my lifestyle, it was going to, or my personality, it was going to be moronic no matter how I did it. So that was that particular. But I got very, very lucky when I went out there. Actually, very blessed. I have a friend that every time I say I'm lucky, he said, "No, you're blessed." I was blessed a couple of times when I got out there, so it wasn't the complete disaster it could have been. But I went out there because New York open mics, Los Angeles open mics. There are no open mics in Charlottesville.
So what was your first open mic night? You're in a new city. You don't know anybody. You don't have as much money as you thought. And boom, there you are on stage, a young guy.
At the Comedy Store on Monday night. I don't remember. They, of course, didn't know who I was, but somehow I got a good spot that night. You can go on real early and there's nobody there. You can go on real late and there are people there and they're drunk. I got a good spot in the middle of the show, and I wish to God I can remember what jokes I told, or the kind of jokes I told. I really don't, but it went well, and they invited me back for the very next week, and I thought, well, they were inviting me back because I did real well. Well, it was that, and I didn't know it at the time, but when I went back, I was showcasing for Mitzi Shore to see if I to be a regular at the Comedy Store. I didn't know that's what was happening. I didn't know that that's what was happening. I didn't know I had passed until I got off, and they came up to me and said, "Yeah, you can call in for spots now at the store." It went real well. I guarantee you the jokes were dreadful. I guarantee you. But for some reason that night, it went well.
I get the feeling you're more self-deprecating than what reality is like, because you were showcasing. But let me ask you this. This is what I'm curious about. Does somebody learn a formula for telling jokes? I know a lot of comedies about timing, tragedy plus timing. That's not all. There's also the unexpected line at the end. Yeah. So how do you learn how to write? How does somebody learn how to sort of write comedy jokes?
You watch and you listen. You watch good comics and pay attention to what they're doing. I found a book that wasn't intended to teach you comedy, but what it was just like, I think it was like maybe 15 different comics and their routines written out. Now, it wasn't meant to instruct, but that's how I used it. How do you take a funny idea? And I do, as you've seen, one-liners. Set up, punchline. It's not long form like say, Chris Rock or Dave Chappelle or Bill Burr. It's
right, classics like Henny Youngman and Rodney Dangerfield.
Right. Exactly like that. Set up, punchline. So, you get a funny idea and you just figure out by trial and error, there's no other way to do it. I don't know that you might come naturally to telling funny stories, but one-liners, you got to learn how to be concise. How much information is enough information? You don't want too much information in it. So, I just studied it.
So let me ask you about your sobriety. You've got over 30 years sobriety?
32 this past April.
Oh, congratulations, man. That is awesome.
And real quickly, I'm so glad, I told somebody this the other day, that I didn't have to go through my early sobriety with a pandemic going on. I don't know how I would have done.
I can imagine.
I don't know how I would have done because I was talking to actually a lady after a show who had like 4 months at that point, and this was like maybe 2-3 weeks ago. And I was telling her, I don't know how I could have. I might have made it. Boy, I tell you.
How have you been making it now?
It hasn't been difficult. I'll take a bow in that it never even crossed my mind to, turn into alcohol in order to deal with. Because I got a little crazy. I got a little stir crazy. I was in my apartment by myself. I lived by myself, and I wasn't in the same room with another human being for about 60 days. And I was going crazy.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I was just going crazy.
Did you start telling yourself jokes?
No, I just spent so much time writing jokes. And so
hopefully you'll bless us with the product of quarantine in a little bit, right?
And that, in essence, was telling myself jokes. But, talking to myself out loud. I tell you what, I have daily conversations, plural, with God. We talk things, or I talk. Presumably God's listening. But I do a lot of talking. I have people that I consider guardian angels. We do a lot of talking. So I was talking. I don't know that it were there were many jokes in those, but yeah, God, if I had to do it like within the first 4 months, been difficult. Been very difficult.
That is good.
But at any rate, I got 32 years now, and so now it's just. And you know what I do every morning? Did it this morning? I've been doing it every morning for a couple of weeks. I hop on YouTube and I find me a AA speaker. And I listen to him or her talk. And I'm not always really focused in on the specifics of what they're saying, but just their tone and their attitude is just very reassuring to me first thing in the morning, as opposed to hopping on CNN or MSNBC first thing in the morning and make myself ill for the rest of the day. I listen to an AA speaker.
Andy, that's really profound. And just in contrast, my life is I wake up and I turn on YouTube and I watch cat videos.
Yeah. Cat videos are probably maybe second or third on my list. I like animal videos. But yeah, so that was my AA participation, was listening to.
Take us back to when you got sober. Were you intervened on? Was it your old lady? Was it a policeman like Mike Peterson here?
I was on the road for a couple of weeks, got back into Houston. Sometime during the day, started drinking immediately, woke up the next morning, and after 2 or 3 weeks on the road, I had like $20. Just, I don't know where it went. I know where a lot of it went was drinking, but then it probably went to some other places after I got drunk. And I just woke up, and the big book loves to use the word bankrupt. And I was tapped out. I just fucking tapped out. I couldn't do it anymore. I just could not do it anymore. And I just woke up one Monday morning. It was a Monday morning, and a friend who lived nearby took me to a meeting that day, and I was rooming temporarily with another comic who had gotten sober in February of that year. We started going to meetings downtown. I just woke up. I was exhausted. I had nothing left. Part of my routine used to be calling up people and asking them what happened the night before because I was a blackout drunk.
Sure.
And it was never just anything good like, hey, you know what? You actually resuscitated my grandpa. Thank you very much.
You know that, I don't know if you know that blackout feeling when you know something bad happened, having the slightest idea what it is, but you got that feeling in the back of your head.
As long as there's no ring or tattoo, right?
Yeah. That was part of my day was waking up.
Figuring out what happened.
Yeah.
So was that your first experience with any type of recovery group or?
No, I got a DWI once in Los Angeles, and I was required to go to AA. When I started going to meetings in Houston, and when it finally took with my friend when we were going, we're comics, we're artists, we're in show business, we're unpredictable, we're rebels in our own way. Then we'd be sitting there and we'd listen to some staid banker from downtown Houston talk about the same things going in his head that were going through ours, and we got to think, well, maybe we're not so special after all there, but, drunk's a drunk.
Yeah, absolutely. When I started going early in recovery, the person who I identified most with was a married housewife who drank and something completely different. And like in every aspect, she and I were polar opposites.
Yeah.
But that's who I sort of latched onto because when they speak, our story is universal, right?
Yeah.
My friend Chris Davis, you might know, who says all that changes are names and faces.
Yeah.
Because it's a disease and it's sort of kind of predictable.
Yeah. Out in L.A. when I went because of the DWI, I was just, could you sign my paper so I can get out of here? And that was, and it was actually, the meetings quite often were very entertaining. I mean, I kind of enjoyed going to speakers' meeting because they were usually interesting stories and everything, but it wasn't, let's go. I got drinking to do here. But for, you get, it happens when it's supposed to happen. And I was ready to, because like I said, I had nothing left, I probably, I went to an AA meeting and that took, but I was just so empty. I probably could have gone to some, a cult of some sort. That would have took, because there's just nothing, no defenses left.
Yeah.
So first group to get a hold of me won. Happily, it was AA.
That's great.
Yeah.
We ask what happened or what was it like, what happened, and what's it like now? So kind of like just what is it like now? Before you tell your jokes, if you would, but...
One quality I don't know how terrific a person I am, but one quality I do have that I'm grateful for is that I am a grateful person. I look back and I think what should have been, by all rights, what could have been. I think about specific instances where people have done so much for me, and I really do live a life of gratitude, I think, and it's very serene in a way. We all have situations we're all dealing with now from every damn direction these days. Not a whole lot of serenity, but there is serenity in my own life, in my own head. I'm very, very blessed, very blessed.
As are we, that you're in recovery and not falling off bar stools and meeting girlfriends on the floor.
Yeah.
So, you made me think of something, and that is like, life's not fair. We think about all the things that we did, and if life were fair, you and I would be locked up probably.
Oh,
or worse.
Or buried.
Right. So
or in jail because, we buried somebody.
And it's this beautiful second chance to be in recovery and to be able to, just take advantage of time that we were wasting before.
Yeah, and to recognize it on a daily basis. It really is kind of, I guess, a feeling of serenity or a calming feeling to, okay, you got through this. You probably could have got through it a little 2 or 3 years earlier than you did. It wasn't necessary to drink that much for that long. You could have learned the same lessons 5 years earlier. But here I sit, talking to you terrific people, reflecting on on the life I have now as a comic. Nothing better. I'm so blessed. I'm a stand-up comic. I get to do that on a regular basis. What could be better? You
have any gigs coming up you want to tell people about?
Oh, gigs these days are catch as catch can. Every Monday, they just restarted up again this past Monday, but Rudyard's on.
Right, I know where that is.
Yeah, every Monday. It's the best open mic in town. I love that room. So I'm there every Monday. There's a venue called The Secret Group, which is on Polk at St. Emmanuel. They do comedy every night. At the moment, it's just all local comics now because nobody's flying a plane to come in to play.
Everybody's wearing masks and they're mumbling. They're hard to hear.
Yeah, they're going to a lot of adhering to all the protocol. They changed the cover on the mic after every comic. Gloves are available if you want to use them, and hand sanitizer. And the tables are now, they've reconfigured their
seating,
their room.
Right.
They used to be just like folding chairs and row after row of folding chairs. Now they just set up tables, properly spaced. Everybody doing what they can. So gigs I'm getting on like a almost a week by week basis. Who's got what? Yeah, I'll be there.
Well,
nothing big coming up.
you're welcome to come to my house and make me laugh anytime.
Okay, you have protocol there. You got.
I'm a doctor, of course.
You got gloves and sanitizer and.
I have a full hazmat suit you can wear.
Yeah, there you go.
So, Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story? You don't have the same recovery, but I believe you might be married to somebody who has a good story.
Yeah. And actually, that's kind of how I got involved in stand-up comedy. I'd gotten divorced and had been single for a couple of years. And I was dating a disc jockey, the morning show disc jockey in Houston that would get free tickets to the comedy club. You know, the Laugh Stop manager would bring some comics to out-of-town comics by the radio show. And so Friday nights, it wasn't dinner and a movie, it was dinner and then the free comedy shows. And so week after week, we were going to the Laugh Stop, and I was having so much fun, all the laughter, and just, that's something that I would like to do. So I got together with a friend of mine, and we sat down and wrote some jokes. I did my first open mic and had a blast with it. It was like a high I had never felt before.
You were a policeman already at this time?
I was a police officer.
I had already served.
Right.
Thank you for that.
Right.
And back and safe. And
still active on the in patrol, night shift sergeant. Had good days off, so I could do comedy. It was like hitting a home run.
When you got the laughter,
I
right?
got the laughter.
Yeah.
And I wanted more and more and more of it. And James Ladmiral, a good friend of ours, was teaching a 6-week workshop. I went to that, and I started getting gigs as an opener at the Laugh Spot, the Comedy Showcase, the Laugh Stop, and it just kind of grew from there. And I was Mike Peterson, the Houston's original comedy cop. So now I'm doing law enforcement banquets. They would have speakers come in and do talk for 15, 20 minutes about penal code update or code of criminal procedure.
Hilarious stuff, right?
Hilarious stuff. And then these chiefs of police were starting to say, hey, this comedy cop, let's bring him in and have him talk to us for 20, 25 minutes.
Yeah, darken up the light, penal code review.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and then I went ahead and this was before MySpace and YouTube and all that stuff. I had comedycop.com as a website. And one of the associate producers out of New York City at The View had pulled it up and invited myself and a guy with the NYPD, Ralph Murphy with the NYPD, and a Chicago cop, and the three of us performed on The View. Joy Behar came out and introduced us, and we all did 90 seconds. It was kind of a contest thing, but it wasn't. It was, but it wasn't kind of thing. And but that was great. We were in full uniform and doing comedy. And anyway, so from there, it just kind of ballooned, and then eventually I meet Vanetta Murphy Peterson, and I tell you what, that's probably been the best thing that ever happened to me.
She said, "You are a joke."
Yeah. She's a lifelong friend of George Joseph. George had started the Sober Recreation Committee back 28 years ago. And after about 3 or 4 years, he passed it on to Vanetta. And she's been running it ever since as the chairman of the Sober Recreation Committee, SRC. So.
And one of the biggest things that you do is put on your largest fundraiser, which is Addicted to Comedy.
Addicted to Comedy, right.
Yeah. How did that get started?
That got started with I was opening for a show at the Laugh Stop over and they had moved off of West Gray over to the second floor building over on Wall.
Yeah.
And a comedian came in to do a guest spot, a headliner, and that's what the management wants to see, a guy do a guest spot in order to book him as a headliner later on down the line. A guy named Jesse Joyce comes in and does 7 minutes of nothing but recovery comedy. And it was hilarious. When he got off the stage, he went out to the front lobby, and Vanetta went out there and talked to him about getting Addicted to Comedy off the ground. She kind of threw some ideas around with him and said, oh, well, it kind of sounds like Addicted to Comedy. I do those shows all over the nation all the time. And so they kind of hooked up and got this thing off the ground. And Jesse Joyce was our first headliner that first year. That was back in 2009. Now we're coming up on our 12th year.
Wow.
Coming up this October. October the 10th is going to be our 12th annual Addicted to Comedy this year.
So where will it be? What time? How do people find out about it?
It's SRC is under the umbrella of the Council on Alcohol, and so we're on their calendar. SRC also has a website, Facebook page, srchouston.com. If you just Google SRC Houston, it'll all come up. Facebook, Sober Recreation Committee on Facebook, it'll come up. So we promote it through the Council on Alcohol, through the website, through the Facebook page. All our headliners have been are in AA. Some of our feature acts and some of our openers in AA. We sell out every year. We fill the auditorium over at the council, and that's where we have the shows, in the actual auditorium over at the Council on Alcohol. Yeah.
Best audiences ever.
Oh yeah, it's unbelievable.
AA audience, they're the best.
What makes them the best?
They're so open and forgiving and welcome, non-judgmental, and it's a celebrate. They're all together to celebrate. I was thinking about this one day. I don't know if there's anything to this, but I think the reason maybe we connect with AA audiences is that we're both doing the same thing. Comics take something negative and turn it into a positive. Nobody writes jokes about a great date. Jokes about bad dates and bad days and bad bosses and this heartache and that heartache. But you turn it into something positive, a joke that gets a laugh. Well, that's what people in recovery are doing. They're taking a negative and turning it into something positive.
Right, like in AA meetings is the only place you can laugh about a failed suicide attempt.
Yeah, and like I say, they don't pass judgment, and they just show up with a great. Any AA meeting is like a celebration, a fellowship. So they show up in a great mood to begin with. It's real hard to screw up an AA show. Not that it can't be done, but those are my favorite shows by far.
So let me throw an ethical question at you guys. I've been dying to ask. In positive recovery, we borrow a lot from the science of happiness, science of well-being. It's called positive psychology. And there they talk about there's 24 universal character strengths. All of us have these strengths. And what we do is we try to get people to live in those strengths, to lead with those strengths, instead of focusing on all the negative that's happened, although there's sometimes you do have to unclog the pipes. It's more about like, what are you going to build? What are you going to do? And strengths are not de facto good. Like, let's say curiosity is a strength, but you can overuse it or underuse it. And if you're too curious, think about somebody like a reporter in your face, just really, crossing boundaries, blah, 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 asking questions. That would be too much. That's not a golden mean. So like we talk about, like if you use the strength in the right amount, it's right. Too little curiosity would be, you know what, I'm not engaging in conversation at all. You're kind of like isolated. And I use that as an example because I want to throw an ethical question around comedy. Because I love Ricky Gervais, Jerry Seinfeld, and I heard them talking about how it's their calling to being a comedian. And they talked about making people laugh at a funeral. And so, of course, being, in the mental health professional, my feathers got really ruffled. I thought that can't be right. That is one area that you just don't cross. What do you guys' thoughts about that?
First of all, you got to know your audience. For instance, I may say we're all at a funeral and something occurs to me. I may whisper a joke to Mike because I know Mike real well and I know how to get y'all I don't know very well at all. So I probably wouldn't tell you whatever that joke is. You got to know your audience. And the other thing with bad taste, political correctness and all that, you got to ask who the joke lands on. That's one of my guiding spirits is, they talk about don't punch down. Just I'm not going to, I wouldn't make fun of a widow or whatever that joke might be. I wouldn't do that. I might make fun of an awkward eulogy by the minister or something. As a matter of fact, here's a specific, excellent example. At my dad's funeral, minister didn't know him, but he's up there and he's got this fact wrong and that fact wrong. And I turned to my mom and said, who are we burying today? Are we at the right place? But, now I might not have, I wouldn't have said that to the minister afterwards. I wouldn't have kidded him about it. I'll turn to my mom and make that joke.
Did she laugh out loud?
Yeah. She was probably 2 seconds away from asking me the same question because he kept getting facts wrong.
Maybe he was at the wrong funeral.
Yeah, it could be. But anyway, so, you ask who the joke lands on and from mean from not mean. And, so at a funeral, it would just depend on the joke and who I was telling the joke to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really do any funeral jokes, but I do
jokes at a funeral. Would that be would make people laugh at a funeral? Is that something okay to do?
I don't know about that so much, but I end a lot of my shows with a joke that's obviously about death. It's a motorcycle accident where there's body parts everywhere. I've got arms over there. I've got legs over there. Got his head over here in the esplanade. Like a good officer, I'm going to log the locations of the body parts because that's what we do. It's important. Log the locations. I walked up to the head, the all-important head of this deceased, one head in esplanade. And I'm trying to spell esplanade, and it's like I give up, and I kick the head over toward the street. One head on curb, Kerb. And I even spell curb wrong, so let alone esplanade. But it's a lot of self-deprecation in my act in law enforcement. I do a lot of law enforcement banquets, but trying to get away from the law enforcement stuff now and some of my new topics.
So are a lot of people in AA, by the way, trying to get away from law enforcement stuff.
Yeah. I do a lot of jokes about DWI and drug use and whatnot, but I do, especially for like the Addicted to Comedy. Everybody knows who Vanetta is here in the AA world here in Houston. And she actually introduces everybody initially and puts out some announcements before the show. And then every other year it's me who's hosting and emceeing the show. And so without a doubt, I've got to do some self-deprecation, but I've also got to throw Vanetta into the mix of it. So I usually tell everybody about that first date. We're at a club and there's a live band and we're dancing and she's drinking her water and I'm drinking my rum and Coke. And it was funny that first date. Every time I took a sip of that rum and Coke, I'm getting this nice kiss from Vanetta. I'm thinking, oh, wow. Yeah, am I a good kisser or what's going on here? Take a sip of that rum and Coke. Here comes another kiss. And then I finally figured out, she was wanting some of that taste of that rum. And
so then you bought rum-flavored lipstick and it was all over.
Yeah. And I tell everybody, well, I think that qualifies for a desired ship. I wanted to point out one other thing with the Sober Recreation Committee. They do fun events, and that's one of Vanetta's mantras is fun and recovery. You got to have just because you're in AA doesn't mean you can't have fun anymore. And so it's all about fun and recovery. That's what Sober Recreation Committee is about. So there's a lot of events throughout the year. We have movie nights, 3 or 4 of those a year. Some of them are based around the holidays. It'd be a Christmas movie, and obviously it's for family and bring your kids. A lot of these events go on either over at the Council on Alcohol or the locations are on the website. But we do paint parties. We do a Jingle Bell Bowl every year, and it's we have the Santa hats. We even have bells for your bowling shoes. And, for like $20, you're getting free pizza and as many balls as you can bowl in 2 hours. So it's a great deal. We do golf. We have ongoing softball. And then of course, the chili cook-off was our first annual, which we thought would maybe compete with the barbecue cook-off. You go down to the barbecue cook-off and
are you speaking of the rodeo?
The rodeo, the rodeo barbecue cook-off. And it's kind of a drunk fest. I'm sorry, but everybody has a lot of fun down there, and there's some great food and whatnot. But we wanted to have something a little different, and so Positive Recovery hosted our first annual, and I think we're going to do it again this upcoming year at the start of rodeo and do a chili cook-off. We had a great first year attempt at this, and
close to 200 people.
Yeah.
You guys have done a lot for the recovery community in Houston for sure, and quickly pivoted with COVID-19, where they were actually doing Zoom virtual bingo, and it's been tons of fun. There's been prizes and games and things that people are doing, and people from all over were dialing in and being on the Zoom bingo, virtual bingo. I think there was people from Florida and all over.
Virginia.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That's a great point. I was actually about to ask what you did during the quarantine, because there might very well, not too far in the future, another stay-at-home order if, we have another wave.
Yeah.
And what you guys did. So thank you. That was great.
Yeah, and as Andy pointed out, very challenging times for people in AA.
But thank you for what you guys offer, because you're right. It's not just fun. It's fellowship.
Yeah.
It's support.
Exactly.
That's very important.
The first time, the speaker I listened to this morning made the same point. But just going into an AA room when you're ready to go into an AA room, and you don't even have to, it's best if you listen and take it in and think and talk. But if you just sat there and just soaked in the vibe, it's just a great, great place to be. If it's time for you to be there, if you're there because the court told you to show up, maybe it'll take, probably it won't, but yeah, the fellowship's very, very important.
For sure. So each time that we meet together, and we're on day 5, like Dr. Power said earlier in the call, we work on positive interventions, and I actually sent them ahead to you guys. I don't know if either of you had time to take a look at them or to work on them, but today's, like Dr. Power said, is about good health. Good health, like wealth, is a state of mind. Your health is good when you have a good relationship with your current state of health, just as wealth is satisfaction with what you have. While perfect health is a great gift, any health is good when appreciated. Deepak Chopra said, if we are creating ourselves all the time, then it is never too late to begin creating the bodies we want instead of the ones we mistakenly assume we are stuck with. So today's PI was to focus on our health, and we were asking for folks to write down 10 things that you can be grateful for regarding the current state of your health, and then maybe choose one thing to do today in order to improve your physical health. Something as simple as scheduling a doctor's appointment, exercise, making healthy eating choices, prioritizing rest, things like that. So whatever you choose today, we're asking that you stick to it and practice it with an intentionality. So maybe I'll start out with Dr. Powers and ask him what he did today that was focusing on his health.
Okay, will do. So yeah, the 10 things to be grateful for was a little challenging because I woke up with really bad left calf pain. I got a heavy bag, a punching bag. I never boxed or anything. I'm like so not violent, but it's great exercise. I've been doing that since the gym's closed, and I needed a way to stay healthy. But like I'm an addict, yeah. So if I do something, it's like all the way in, right? I've got all these boxing contraptions, watching videos. So I think I just completely overdid it, and so I guess I'm grateful that my right calf doesn't hurt as bad as my left calf. So that was a start. I failed because what I wanted to do was make good eating choices, and today at the center, it was somebody's birthday that's really dear, and Julie brought in this phenomenal cake from Common Bond. And so I failed. So I have to go next on the list. I'm going to floss. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to do my monthly floss. I don't know if you guys had a chance to do it, but...
I was telling Aunt, we just came from Gus's Chicken over in Washington. And
there's no way that isn't healthy.
Yeah.
There's no way. Chicken,
how was it?
Baked beans, potato salad. It was delicious. Awesome. It was delicious.
Good, healthy eating choices. Way to go, man. That you did today's PI.
I messed up today because I didn't go for my daily walk early in the morning. So I have yet to do the health requirement, but I'll do that maybe 8, 9 o'clock tonight when it starts to cool off. And I usually do about 30, 35 minutes. I'm going to try and push it to 45 today.
Awesome.
I love walking. Walking does about a half a dozen great things for me. So,
what are those half a dozen great things?
I think, I read or heard a gentleman talk about creativity. One time he said the circumstances where people do some of their most creative thinking, driving, in the shower, and walking. And I do a lot of comedy writing while I'm walking. Punchlines will occur to me. Productive thinking, I'll talk to myself out loud, working out problems. And, of course, the obvious physical benefits. And I spend too much time in my apartment by myself. So just getting out in the neighborhood, nodding my head, waving. One of the sad things about this COVID is I don't own any pets, but I love dogs. On my walks, if I see somebody walking their dog, I'll go over. Okay, if I pet your dog? They always say yes. Can't do that.
Right.
Can't do that now. So I miss that. But that's a huge part of my walking experiences. And, people out walking their children or their toddlers or something, I like to, talk to those.
You know what else walking is good for? So we used to think that people who are showing signs of dementia, of cognitive decline, we call it, we used to think that if we taught them another language or maybe had them do Sudoku puzzles, that we would slow the progression. And then after 20 years and some studies, we turned out that all we had was demented people who could do Sudoku in French, right?
Yeah.
So what walking does, just 15 or 30 minutes a day, it wasn't something long, I forgot the study, but it slows the progression of cognitive decline.
Well, very good. Because I have read that doing crossword puzzles were good to slow dementia. And I've been doing crossword puzzles for, if I'm 70, I've been doing them for over 50 years. So I was kind of thinking, well, I hope that's true.
Well, that doesn't make sense because you've been 70 for 30 years, it says on your bio.
Well,
right?
That's show business.
Exactly.
You ought to know better than taking show business. PR, releases, seriously.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
But I do walking, and it just, you go for a walk in the Houston heat,
Oof.
come back, take a hot shower, feel pretty damn good.
Absolutely.
Take a nap.
Fantastic. How about you, Mike?
Well, I started off with, after I dropped Vanetta off at physical therapy at the Med Center, I went over to Christie's Donuts and then Gus's Chicken. So after I drop Andy off, I'm probably going to have to head home. And we live right over there off of Allen Parkway, so I'll probably do the loop, which is about 3 miles, and get my 10,000 steps knocked out. So I wear a Fitbit, and I think you wear one there, something similar to it. And
Yeah, I'm still doing my Fit races.
Yeah,
The last podcast that we did, I've earned 2 more medals. So I accomplished my Paris one and also my Peter Pan and Wendy one, which was about London. And for Mother's Day, I got this under-the-desk bicycle, so I can pedal away.
That's great.
Yeah, Dr.
That's
Powers
great.
helped me put it together. And so each day I am now riding my bike at work while on Zoom calls or talking to folks. And so I'm getting some extra miles in at the office. So it's good stuff.
She said, "Is this noticeable?"
I want to check out that Yes Fit you were talking about.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Yeah. And I will tell you that people will say, are you dancing? Do you have to go to the bathroom? Like, why are you doing this? And I'm like, I'm riding my bike. So it's good stuff. And so each day we focus on a new PI. And so next week, our next podcast, we'll be focusing on day 6, where we'll be taking the time to write our own personal mission statements. And we're so glad that both of you are here today and could be on the show with us.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
We enjoyed having you. So what we're going to do next week is draft your personal mission statement. It should be 1 sentence, so take your time. Keep writing until you get it down to 1 sentence. Keep it on your desk, by your bed, or on your calendar. Commit it to memory. Your mission statement might grow and change as you mature and develop. You can change it at any time, but always have one.
Thanks. And I'm actually going to read the quote because it's one of my favorites. It's one I live by James Thurber. It said, "Everyone should try to learn before they die what they're running from and to and why." From the same author as Unicorn in the Garden. So before we close, we have gifts for you guys, Mike and Andy. You guys each get your daily guide so you can thrive in recovery and you can just thrive.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to thank everybody who, by the way, this podcast, this is our 5th recorded one, but last week, or this week, was it last week? Who knows? Recently, it aired. It wasn't live because people were confused. They're like, I don't know how to hear it live. But the first podcast actually aired. And the amount of positive feedback that we've gotten, I'd say surprising too, because I just didn't know that many people would listen. Of course, I assumed, who would bother. But thank you guys so much. All the support. Keep it coming. Appreciate it. And until next week, thrive.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Positive Recovery MD. Don't forget to visit positiverecoverymd.com to sign up to get your daily positive intervention sent straight to your inbox. Be sure to subscribe to Positive Recovery MD on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast to receive an automatic download when a new episode drops. And as always, if you or someone you know needs help, visit positiverecovery.com or call 877-4SOBRIETY, which is 877-476-2743. We are here to help.